do it. I want to start off talking about the psychology of selling, and that brings us to the whole purpose of this seminar. The whole purpose of this seminar is this. We know that with regard to selling, the 80-20 rule, the Pareto Principle, prevails. The 80-20 rule simply says that 80% of the sales are done by 20% of the salespeople. That the top 20% of the salespeople always do 80% of the sales, and the converse of that is also true. That the bottom 80% only do 20% of the sales. Our job is to take everybody in this room, if they are not now in the top 20%, and move them into the top 20% by giving them the tools to do so. Now, if you're already in the top 20%, and I suspect that many of you are, then our job is to get you into the top 20% of the top 20%, which is the top 4%. And there's a very, very good reason why we wanted to get into the top 20% and then subsequently into the top 4%. And it is simply this, is that once you get into the top 20%, you never have to worry about money again. You never have to worry about job security. You never have to worry about employment. The people in the top 20% are some of the highest paid and happiest people in our society. The people in the bottom 80% have to worry all the time. Now, the great tragedy of our society is that the majority of people of whatever trade, profession, or industry spend most of their time worrying about money. Does anybody here worry about money? We all worry about money, don't we? And you know how consuming this is of life, is to worry about money? To be always worried about money, always thinking about money, getting up in the morning and worried about money, thinking all day about money, counting pennies in the evening. On weekends, what we do, we sit and talk to our spouses, our friends, and worry about money. Our job is to get into the top 20% so we don't have to worry about money, and then get into the top 4%, and in the top 4% we become some of the highest paid people in the world. The statistics on this are very simple. The people in the top 20% on average earn 16 times the average of the people in the bottom 80%. And the people in the top 4% earn 54 times the average of the people in the bottom 20%. This is astonishing. A recent study done by a large American insurance company found that they had individual agents throughout the country who alone were selling and earning more than 40 and 50 trained professional agents of the same company selling the same products to the same people. And we all know that's true. So our job is to get into the top 4%. That's the whole purpose of this course. The second principle is this. It's what is called the winning edge. And the winning edge theory is very important. What it simply says is that the difference between the top performers and the average or mediocre performers is not a great, massive difference. It is always just a small difference. It's just a tiny difference on the margin, if you like. They just do certain things a certain way, a little tiny bit better each day, and it adds up to an enormous quantum difference. Probably the best example of it is this. If a horse runs in a horse race and comes in first by a nose, it wins 10 times the prize money of the horse that comes in second by a nose. Now, does it mean that the horse that comes in first by a nose is 10 times better than the horse that comes in second? Does it mean that it's twice as good? Does it mean that it's 50% better or even 10% better? The truth of the matter is that it's only a nose better, but the difference in prize money is enormous. In a study done not long ago, they compared two horses that had run in the same races throughout the first 9 months of the year. They compared their times, and they found that the winning horse, the top horse, had earned over $775,000 in prize money over the first 9 months of the year. Went on to break $1 million, one of the first horses ever to do that. This is some time ago. They found that another horse that had run in the same races in every single case with them, but had not been in the prize money very often, had won about $75,000. There was a difference of over 10 to 1 in their winnings, and they went back and they compared the times. What were the times that they'd run? And they added up all the times, they accumulated the times. You know what they found? That the difference between the horse that had won $775,000, a horse called Ahmed, and the horse that had won $75,000 was about 3% to 4% faster. The winning horse was only 3 to 4% faster in time, but the difference translated into income was 10 times, and later on, by the end of the year, it was up to 15 times the earnings. The person who gets the sale for their company gets 100% of the business and 100% of the commission. The person who does not gets 0. It does not mean that the person that does not is only half as good as the person who gets the sale. It just means that they're a slight tiny bit different. The key to success is to develop that winning edge. If we develop that winning edge, there's no reason why you cannot move very rapidly into the top 4%. And that's very, very important. Now, when we look at this, and many of you who've been through other courses that I give know how adamant I am on what I'm going to talk about now, which is what is the characteristic of successful salespeople. One of the things we know is that there is an inner game of selling. That we have looked at successful salespeople and we've tried to find out what are the characteristics that separate them from poor salespeople, and we find that they cannot be separated on the basis of age, of intelligence, of grade level, of experience. We know that there are people who are young who are more successful than people who are 20 years older. There are people with no experience who are more successful than people with extensive experience. There are people with limited education who sell more in the same industry than people with university degrees. There are people who graduated in the bottom 20% of their class who outsell the people who graduated in the top 20%. So we know that it has nothing to do with those basic things that we would consider to be the factors that contribute to success. We know that it's an inner game. It's what's going on inside the mind of the salesperson that makes all the difference. Harvard University did a study of something like 16,000 salespeople and found that the basic qualities that determine success or failure in selling were psychological qualities holding constant for everything else. And if we develop those psychological qualities, they form the foundation for our sales success. And it's that foundation that enables us to erect a very, very strong edifice. And once you've erected that foundation, once you've got your feet solidly rooted in the ground of your own innermost convictions, once you absolutely know and believe that you are excellent at selling, you can go anywhere in the world and write your own ticket.